Decoded. By end of the presentation, my aim would be to explain you the structure of universe. It includes everything, from proton, electron to everything. Just go through what I will be covering. First of all, I'll be explaining the structure of empty space, which is vacuum. Vacuum is, I will prove that vacuum is not empty. And then I will go through electron and positron structure. And then I'll be able to crack the code for alpha, which is fine structure constant, which was still a mystery, which was only a rational, it was only a reciprocal of 1/137, and that 137 was a mystery yet, and all scientists were trying to get the value for the last 50 years. And later, then there is a psi function, which many of you would be knowing, the quantum mechanics basics at least. The psi has been, when it was actually initially launched, its value, its importance was not known. Later there was a scramble to it, and then it was later termed as probability density function, which I will be explaining in different terms. And then we'll go through what are electric field or what are magnetic field. I'm not talking about equations. I'm going to explain you the internal structure. What are we made up of? What are electric field made up of? What are magnetic field made up of? Then we'll go to what is gravitation. Einstein was able to explain gravity very well through general theory of relativity, but mystery was what is space-time curvature. Nobody was able to explain what is space-time curvature. The calculation is very good, but no explanation for it. And structure of photon, true, I will go through it. Let's start with the basic fundamental, which was missing in the current physics. Which without this basic, I cannot explain you in detail other factors. Let's just imagine an entity in space. Entity in space means I'm going to take you to the different universe where it's only one dimension available. Like one dimension means you can go either left or right. Right. Then what happens when I ask you to plot the coordinates, you will say XR. It is XR distance from the origin. It's very simple. Now if I bend the space in one dimensional world, and now I tell you to plot the coordinates in terms of only one dimension, the problem is that you cannot do it by putting y-axis, because if you put y-axis, then I already told you it is already in one dimensional world. You cannot use other coordinates. The problem was solved when you actually see the complex numbers. The complex number is real and imaginary. It contains real and imaginary component. This imaginary component I is root of -1. This exists in quantum mechanics everywhere, but nobody explained why that imaginary number comes into place. First of all, now if I modify the previous picture and I put imaginary axis over there, then I can plot the entity coordinates in terms of real number and imaginary number in one dimensional plane. Like now, if I take it to the three-dimensional world, similarly, then I can see there, as you know, vector can be expressed in terms of x, y, and z, I, j, and k. This is what we studied in school. But this is not enough. We have to take it in a very general manner, a complex number. Our universe understands only numbers, and that is complex number, not real numbers. Those are complex numbers. Without two different spaces, we cannot exist. One space cannot divide into two different kinds of structure. We have positron, we have electron, we have minus, we have plus. With only one entity, we cannot exist. So I want you to imagine this entity as an electron. Now what you see in this figure is that an electron is able to move from in a real plane. If I tell you move, I mean I am moving this way. And when you actually go into quantum physics, the movement inside the electron, that is oscillation electron, because according to Dirac, electron even at rest moves at speed of light. Then the problem was that in that situation, if it is moving at speed of light, then the mass of the electron should be infinite. But the problem was solved if we take two axes together, not one real component. There are two components. One is real and one is imaginary. So electron would be going through, moving in the real plane and oscillating in the imaginary plane. And the positron is not a mirror image, I explained in quantum mechanics. It's a conjugate. It's very simple to understand when you understand electron. You just have to take a conjugate. Conjugate of this would be positron is moving in imaginary plane and oscillating in the real plane. So we have two kinds of spaces, real and imaginary space in this universe. Now I can go to structure of empty space. as I already discussed, that there should be two kinds of space already exist in our universe, because now we will say that the antimatter, that's positron, is less. But positron basically is positive charge and electron is negative charge. If you take proton, for example, is also positive charge. So proton is stable, electron is stable. That means, and both are moving in the space. So that means our space should be made up of all the real space as well as imaginary space. So I wanted a structure which can tessellate. Tessellate means in hexagon, if you paste in two-dimensional world, it occupies complete space without any void space in it. So, and I wanted it very symmetrical and should cover the maximum area, volume, and it should be closest to sphere. The best option I got was rhombic dodecahedron, which you can see in the figure. Now if you place all the rhombic dodecahedrons together, this is something you get. Now, why I intend to prove that, why the vacuum is not empty, it is made up of like a chessboard, alternate pattern of real and imaginary number, because vacuum polarization do exist. What vacuum polarization says, in vacuum also, there is a virtual electron-positron pair creating and destroying, annihilating each other in a span of very less time. Then this problem was explained in terms of going back to our old friend Heisenberg uncertainty principle. They say that according to Heisenberg uncertainty principle, within a less time, if energy is created and destroyed, no laws of physics are broken. I was not satisfied with the answer because I don't understand how the space will, how the electrons and positron would know about Heisenberg. Then my interest went to electron structure. When I was in school, I was taught like electron is a point. When I graduated, I came to know electron is a probability ball according to quantum mechanics. Then later I understood a lot of string theory tries to explain it. But basic question always lied in my head. What are they made up of? If they are talking about strings, what is this string made up of? Probability ball, I never understood. Point, what is this point made up of? If it is a point, why all electrons have the same characteristic? It has to have something in it. So I tried to go from down to top. Then, in vacuum polarization, I missed one point. When this space meet, when the real and imaginary space meet, why the vacuum polarization occurs? When they meet, they react. Because when you add a real number to a complex imaginary number, the magnitude of square of imaginary number negates itself. Square of I square is -1. So it is a zero space. And this space is very highly unstable. It tries to divide into real and imaginary space. If there is enough space for it to occupy, it will split. But if there is no space, it will just shrink back to the zero state. So there is a frequency, and this will go on and on. The frequency set in every electron, positron, photon is because of the zero space, which is highly unstable. So I went to the classical electron radius, which was very old concept, which was termed as RE. So I believe this is a vibrating body, made of zero space, because only vibration can appear in zero space. As I already explained, electron is oscillating in imaginary plane, so obviously it should have an imaginary plane to oscillate through. And I'll come to the radius later. And I also told you, electron is able to freely move in real plane, so it should also be confined into real plane like this. Green is real, blue is imaginary, and yellow is zero space. Now if you see, radius is RE. The circumference of the imaginary space is quantum wavelength. And this radius for rhombic dodecahedron, radius means the maximum vertices is Bohr radius. This are related like this. This is RE, this is alpha times RE, the radius of imaginary number, and this is alpha squared times RE. So I saw the alpha repeating itself again and again when you actually go deep down. We'll discuss that alpha value fine structure constant later. Now what will be the structure of positron? As I told you, it's a conjugate. So it will just be a conjugate. Imaginary will become real and real will become imaginary. That's it. Now proof of quantization of space. When I mean by telestate, like the structure you just saw the combination of all the rhombic dodecahedron. When a single slit experiment interface, when they say the electron is bombarded into two holes, you understand the interference pattern is created. So when one electron at a time is also bombarded, they see interference pattern, and then they replied that it's not possible because electron cannot, if it's passing through one hole, how can it interfere? Then the solution was given that it passes through both the holes. There were some weird reasons for it, but it was not satisfactory. What is actually happening when an electron is moving in the fabric of space? It is more or less similar to a bullet shot from a gun moving in the water or air. It disturbs the space fabric when an electron is moving. This disturbance goes through both the holes, and when the disturbance still exists when the electron reaches, this disturbance actually interferes, and the electron chooses the least resistance path, and we see the interference pattern. And when we see electron microscope, there are some quasi crystal which look very much, actually it is same as rhombic dodecahedron. What is the structure?
Excuse me, you have only 1 minute.
I already told that my paper is very big. I cannot complete this time.
No, just 2 minutes. You try to wind up because
that's not possible. I have not entered the main guide.
No. Let's follow the structure, right? What we have found.
Okay. Then when you actually observe hydrogen atom inside the scanning electron microscope, you will observe that there is an hexagon in between. The hexagon is coming because when you see from the rhombic dodecahedron from top view, we can see hexagon only. So why the structure is there inside the hydrogen atom when it can be circular in nature? I'll skip that part. Fine structure constant. This I need to explain. The value. The fine structure alpha constant value was cracked by, I was imagining what will happen when the electron is just forming. Just imagine we inject an imaginary space inside a real space. So at the intersection of real and imaginary space, we see a ring of zero space, which is highly unstable, which I believe should collapse to zero space Re, which I explained earlier. So by calculation of thickness of the bubble to collapse, I understood we have one more constant, del cube is equal to 1 plus alpha cube, where alpha is fine structure constant. The del cube was, I believe, it was a ratio, but it has to be number because in quantum physics everything is quantum, that is integer jump. I made an algorithm to find out the two numbers very close to each other, which gives the value of del, very close to what we get from alpha value. If I have del values, I got exact match for these two numbers. I got the del value, I got alpha value, which was still missing. This is termed as a holy grail of the physics, which many scientists tried to prove it. They have weird answers. There is no explanation about the formulas. Those were only approximation. This exactly matched with the CO data 1998 value of our fine structure constant. And then I proved in this slide, fine structure constant is not a constant, which has been observed scientifically too. Then I also explained there is one more constant which is less than Planck length, and when divided it gives approximate value of mass of proton to mass of electron. Psi. Okay, if you want I can continue.
1 minute, just I can give you 1 minute.
Yes. Okay, psi was termed. Psi was the most defining factor, most repeating factor in quantum mechanics, and it is termed as probability density function. And you can imagine an electron cloud moving around the hydrogen atom. So it doesn't give us a proper picture. So what is psi? I was thinking that it boiled down to zero space. Now what happened? Zero space is highly unstable. It's tried to split into real and imaginary component. As electron has real component extra, what happened? It ejects real component. It gets back the real component from the external outer covering. So only imaginary space is coming out of the electron, but both the real and imaginary space is coming from the zero space. So this term, volume, real and imaginary, is very close to the psi which we are using in quantum mechanics. So there is a source and sink concept. So from that I was able to explain electric field, magnetic field and electromagnetic field with the structure. This symbol is a symbol of Chinese symbol of tau. This was termed, this is a very ancient symbol, very old symbol, and it was termed as symbol of energy. Gravitational force also explained with compression of space, time fabric.